broadcast network, AFTERBUZZ TV. Over 20 million weekly downloads in over 150 countries, and your number one source for after-show entertainment. AFTERBUZZ TV, the destination for TV superfans. Producing aftershows for over 300 of your favorite TV shows. Interviewing celebrities and showrunners. And bringing you behind-the-scenes exclusives. All thanks to E! Entertainment's Maria Menounos, producer Kevin Undergaro, and internet leader Akamai. Now, let the buzz begin!
What you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Bad boys, bad boys.
Hey, AfterBuzzers, and welcome to another Secrets and Lies after show. Tonight we're talking Season 1, Episode 7, The Cop, and boy does it feel good to be back. We had a week off last week, and we've been itching for some more secrets and more lies.
Of course. It felt like forever.
I know,
I miss you guys.
Felt like a long time. And before we dive into the episode, want to make sure you guys out there are all subscribed to us on YouTube, youtube.com/AfterBuzzTV. You can also listen to all the podcasts on iTunes and SoundCloud as well. So be sure that you are subscribed and downloading and rating, commenting, all that stuff. I'm Lauren Salon, and you can find me on Twitter at Lauren Salon, and I'm joined tonight by Sterling Cates.
Hey guys, I'm Sterling, and you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Sterling Cates.
All right, so let's dive into it. This one, The Cop. So there was a lot of focus on Cornell.
Yeah, and we knew that was coming, though. There had to be, she's way too suspicious for them not to focus an episode on her.
Right.
But we see, though, that in this episode that she's really not that bad. Like, she doesn't have she's not crooked, because most of the people are actually guilty that we know of.
Exactly. And I liked this episode a lot, because I feel like we did get to see a more dynamic side of Cornell. It wasn't always just like the hard-ass cop, no nonsense. You know, she definitely was that character.
Still had the
in
look.
This episode.
Still had the look.
The death glare. But I think we got to see a little bit more about her history and her past, so it kind of painted a bigger picture.
Right, which we knew nothing about before. We didn't know anything about her family or her history. And so I'm hoping we'll get to learn more as well. Because we didn't really get to meet her husband, or is he still around? Like, I know he lost his license or whatever with the daughter situation, but I don't know. I want to know more about her still. She's still so mysterious.
Yeah, I was definitely feeling there was a child situation, you know, that she was definitely a mother, and I thought that something had gone wrong, and that, you know, with she had a young child that got kidnapped or murdered or something awful, and that's why she was kind of the way she is, which that still could be possible.
Still could be the case. But we know that she has some issues with her daughter, so that she could just be very protective of that, or she just could honestly want, you know, justice for every crime that she's trying to solve. And but she does seem very set on the fact that it's been.
I know. Though,
but what we learned at the end, though, I don't know.
Right. We don't know. I know. Next week is going to, I feel like, more surprises.
And more secrets and more lies.
Which happens every week. So they never let us down with the secrets and the lies and the surprises and the twists. So
I really liked this episode, though, overall. I thought it was a really great episode.
Yeah. And I think Ben also wasn't as impulsive as he's been the last few weeks.
Kind of. I think he's a little impulsive, especially with the whole Linda situation.
Right. Hey, Linda.
Yeah.
I think that was strategic, though, on his part.
You think so?
Yeah.
He did seem a little more savvy this episode. Like, I feel like he's getting the hang of it.
He's starting to
putting pieces together.
It's starting to click, and he's being impulsive in ways that aren't completely irrational and ridiculous.
Yeah.
You know, I felt like he didn't punch anyone this week.
Yeah.
Right?
That's true. Did he? I don't know.
I don't think so.
I don't think he did either. But the thing about him, though, is once he gets something in his head, he it goes full force into it, like 100%. And even like when Fenton was telling him about Cornell, that she, you know, is a crooked cop, blah, 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 he believed it. You know what I mean? And he went home and was like, I've got to stop her, blah, blah, blah. But he doesn't know that for a fact. You know what I mean? Like, he believes it himself because it's happening to him, especially if he thinks he's innocent. But
he's not very thorough with his research.
Well, even when Fenton said, you know, Cornell did all of this to all of these families, to these people, like kind of cornered them and made it seem that they were guilty even though they weren't. And he was just like, oh, 100%, I believe that all of a sudden, you know what I mean? And it turns out they were guilty.
Exactly.
So he can't be so easy to believe everything that he's hearing.
Completely agree. And I feel like maybe toward the end he kind of starts to realize that, because he does realize that Fenton is kind of trying to use him not only to get more notoriety as a writer, but also in Fenton's own personal vendetta against Cornell. You know, because we learned that he has done prison time because Cornell put him away.
Right, exactly. And we learned that he even leaked the information about Ben. So Ben's like, okay, I cannot work with you anymore, because that basically destroyed his family. And, that didn't need to be public.
Yeah. And Dave even, who I know, there's still some suspicion, at least for me, with regard to Dave. But Dave from the get-go is like, I do not trust this guy. He sheds his skin. He's a snake.
I'm definitely suspicious about Dave as well. But we don't know that much about him other than he's just kind of like a bum.
Around.
And he's around all the time.
Always eating their food and stuff. No, I think
he's
there's more to
living the
Dave.
dream, though, if he is innocent. You know what I mean? Like, he just is living at his friend's house, like, just eating their food. I was like, that sounds kind of nice.
Yeah. And speaking of Dave, so Ben and Dave talk about the flashlight and kind of what is the plan with the flashlight, because it's still under the tree, and we learned that it is 2 days. So this episode starts with 2 days before Christmas. So Christmas
is finally happening, guys. It's been a few
we're sitting there watching. We're like, it's been Christmas for like 3 months there.
Well, and especially having the 2 weeks off or the 1 week in between, it felt like Christmas should have happened, a long time ago.
And it's a little weird for us watching as well, being that it's spring
in April.
And the show takes place during the holidays.
That's true.
So that Ben and Dave talk about, okay, what's the next step with this flashlight? Because one, it's wrapped like a present, so you're not going to have any presents left over.
First of all, I can't believe he was taking it to the Christmas party. We'll talk about that in a second. But with Dave, they always have these conversations just like over a beer, on the back porch. He's got to be way more careful about these conversations.
Yeah, after he figured out that his house was being bugged, wouldn't you be a little bit more careful? Like, you solved that problem, but I still wouldn't have these conversations about the murder weapon at your house. Like,
I don't think, first of all, he should take advice from Dave, of all people. But second of all, I don't think he should be telling anybody about what's happening, because that's not safe for, if the information's out there, then it's going to get back.
Yeah.
The truth all comes out.
No one, Ben.
Exactly. He seems just way too trusting of Dave.
Yeah. So let's talk a little about Ben and Christy and Ben and his family. So after he talks with Fenton, he comes back to Christy and is like, I have to be the one to stop Cornell. She's crooked. Jumping on that bandwagon because Fenton says so.
Right. Well, I think he was a little more strategic with that with Fenton. He was like, I don't want to work with you. I don't want to like blah, blah. So he made it seem like he didn't want to work with Fenton. He was just kind of using him for this information at that point. So like when he had that conversation with Fenton, he was like, no, I'm out of here. Like, I don't want to do this. But then when he goes to Christy, he's like, oh, I've got to stop her myself. Yeah. So I think he wanted to make it clear to Fenton that he's not on his team, but he's definitely going to use whatever information he's willing to give him.
Yeah. And so Christy's a little bit suspicious in the beginning, well, rightly so, I think, and not necessarily suspicious, but telling Ben, hey, cool it. You bringing down Cornell is not the solution, and it's not your responsibility.
She was like, how are you going to bring him down? And I was like, exactly. How is he? He doesn't have the best track record with finding people out.
Right. Yeah. But then she kind of transitions from being more like attacking almost, not attacking because was the right thing to say, but she transitions to being, like, okay, with that thing that happened with Kevin, because if we all remember the last episode we saw, Ben gets kidnapped and tortured by his
casually, which he didn't really address at all.
No, I feel like there should have been some kind of discussion of that or kind of closure. That was a pretty serious thing to have happen.
Well, honestly, without Christy bringing it up in that one little moment, we wouldn't have even known, because he seems normal,
right?
Like he does in every other episode.
Yeah, and so she kind of was like, should we talk about this? And he was like, no, I'm fine, lady. So, but then I think, which we were talking about when we were watching this, when Ben comes home at one point and Abby wants to run up and give him a hug, and she doesn't. She says, oh, I'm not supposed to hug you. Mom said to let you hug me first.
Right.
Which seemed really weird.
Well, that did seem really weird. Maybe it's like a PTSD thing. I feel like if someone like comes at you fast, or like he might like respond. Yeah, he might like react a certain way, and obviously he doesn't want to punch Abby in the face.
Right.
So maybe it was just more of like a precaution thing.
Yeah.
But I did like Christy she seemed to be pretty supportive of Ben experiencing, he went through something really traumatizing, and she seemed to be there for him in that respect. She was asking how he is doing, blah, 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 like what's going on. But it wasn't until later that things got a little tense.
Really hit the fan later. Yeah, I agree. I think she was definitely, wanting him to kind of confide in her, and she was genuinely concerned for him and wanting him to open
as she should be. We shouldn't be like we shouldn't be like patting her on the back for being a good wife for once. You know what I mean? Right. She hasn't been supportive really this whole time. But a lot has happened to her. Like, he's put her through a lot.
Very complicated situation with like tons of different layers, so it's not
and there's not like a right way to react to everything that's happening. Like, I feel like it doesn't happen every day that your husband is being accused of murder of his like illegitimate child, and you know what I mean. Like, she's in a really tough spot.
Yeah,
for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And so as the episode goes on, Christy grows more suspicious of Ben. So he's leaving randomly to go run errands or go pick something up, and she's kind of noticing all these weird things that he's going to do. And then it really kind of comes to a head when they are on their way to Chrissy's brother's house, and they stop to pick up another gift, because they dropped the one, and he runs into the woods.
That was probably one of the most frustrating parts of the show so far. First of all, if he does that with his family there, that also puts them, like at risk somehow. I feel like that they were there, and then also like when she was standing there when he came back out of the woods, I was like, oh my God, there is no way for him to play this off. Yeah. And then she sees the book bag, and she's obviously very suspicious, and he didn't play it off well at all.
I took a leak in the woods instead of going into the store where you guys are, where there are probably bathrooms.
Yeah. And like the car was like not even in a parking spot.
No. Yeah.
So it's just,
I mean, okay, this whole thing with the flashlight, and I know I've said this before, that
it was Dave's idea.
Yeah.
Not good
and
idea.
I would probably have driven it like a few states away and hid it somewhere, or soaked it like in a bucket of acid so it totally dissolves, and then like, if you're getting rid of the murder weapon that has your fingerprints all over it and is your flashlight that you have owned, you don't just like in a rush quickly like bury it under a pile of leaves real quick, like on the way to Christmas Eve dinner. I think you are a little more intentional with hiding the evidence.
Yeah. That definitely seemed not the right time or the right place. But when Dave was describing it about the woods on the way to Michael's house, I was picturing like woods in the middle of nowhere. This was in a shopping center. This was a very populated area.
Yeah.
It was very confusing. Not the best place to hide a murder weapon.
And it must not be that far away if the police still have jurisdiction over that area, if they're still going there. So it's not that far. It's like 10 minutes away or something, To
be fair, though, I guess to play, to see his side of it, he can't, if he's being watched 24/7, he can't just take a trip 3 states away. Right. You know what I mean? That would be a little more suspicious than doing it. Like, I feel like he was probably just doing it in the least.
He should have gotten Dave to do it. I bet he could have talked him into
that. I think Dave was involved.
I do too.
After the fact.
I do too, actually.
So we'll
find out more about that next week. But yeah, so the whole flashlight thing, he hides the flashlight. I would have I feel like I would be a much more like better suspect, I guess, if I were Ben.
Yeah.
Think things through a little bit more.
Yeah. If I were ever in this position, I would do that way better.
Yeah, exactly. And so obviously after that, Chrissy's super suspicious and ends up telling her brother. that she's suspicious, because they get to his house and Christy's like, okay, you're clearly lying to me about what's going on. If you're not going to be upfront with me, then go home, sort of thing.
Well, and of course her brother overhears the whole thing, and her family doesn't, as we've learned, her family doesn't really like Ben anyway, so they're always just looking for another reason to not like him, and I guess they just, as any family would, they don't love that he's putting Christy and the girls in this situation, but it didn't help that he overheard that on the steps.
No, yeah. And it seems like, I think from episodes past, that Christy confides in him too, that they're close.
Yeah.
You know, so she tells him this, and then we learn later that he tipped off the police, which frankly...
That was smart of Ben, though, to put that together, because I didn't even think about that.
No, yeah. But frankly, like, in that situation, I mean, you probably should call the police.
I think so, too. I don't think it was rude or, like, a bad move by any means, because if you're already suspicious of him and he has custody of your nieces, he could potentially be dangerous. I mean, we love Ben because it's the show's in his perspective, but as an outsider, they probably don't have, have that.
Oh yeah, I'm sure I'd be suspicious of Ben.
Yeah, so I think it was a good thing that he tipped off the police.
But they end up not finding anything.
Okay, so there's two things about that. Do you think that someone like Dave maybe went and moved the flashlight?
Yeah, I feel like Dave was involved in some way, and he knows where that flashlight was hidden, so he went down and he moved it.
Well, even Ben said, I almost broke my leg on a shopping cart, so he knew, like, around the area it would be. But also, like, if he went and just found it, then Ben didn't do a very good job of hiding it, first of all.
But he kind of told him, because Dave was asking very specific questions too. Even, before he went and hid it, he's asking where he was planning on it or what he was thinking. And then after, he's asking where he did it. So, and he was asking specific questions.
Yeah.
I feel like it. I don't think that it's another stalker or another random person who's been keeping an eye on him.
Well, Dave's got to be involved somehow.
Yes.
And we've only seen him confide, unless they throw us a little curveball here. But the other thing, when Ben yelled out to Linda, who is in the detective unit or whatever, who is giving information to Benton, it seemed like my first thought was like, oh, maybe she found it and, like, didn't say something. But I feel like, because she's, like, on this same thing to find out Cornell or whatever. But I guess I don't think she would do that. Like, I don't know.
No, because I feel like
there's so many other people around, too.
Yeah, I feel like Fenton is paying her off, and that's why she's doing it. I don't think she has some
vendetta against
something
Cornell.
against Cornell.
So I think it's, like, definitely a Dave going and retrieving it.
Right. And I think if, like, her metal detector started beeping, the way that they showed it, they're, like, combing the ground, like, within a few feet of each other.
Yeah.
So I think someone else would have noticed. So I think, I mean, here's the thing. They set us up consistently for things like this to be like, well, duh, clearly it's him. And then there'll be another twist. But that's where I'm leaning with it right now, that Dave knew enough where that flashlight was hidden and is involved in some way with whatever went down that night, in a bad way. And he went to try and cover up the evidence more. Which may end up being like he did it for Ben's own good.
Do you think Dave did it? Like, do you think Dave could be the murderer?
I don't think he did it with his own hands, but I feel like he could be in some complicated way involved in the whole thing, and like something went wrong somewhere.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's
but I definitely think there's more that Dave is keeping from all of us, and I really want to know what it is.
I feel like Jess is definitely hiding something as well, not just the fact that she's in love with Ben, but that
but she's not doing that great of a job hiding.
She seems a little suspicious to me still.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Yeah, and we didn't see much of her this week. We
never really do, though.
No, we saw her going over to the house to apologize to Christy, and Ben overhears that. And, Christy thinks that Ben kind of put her up to it, but I liked his comeback to that. He's like, that's like one of the most awkward situations for me to invite the woman I cheated on or cheated with to talk to my wife. Like, no thanks.
Yeah. That doesn't.
But yeah, we haven't seen much of Jess at all, really, and especially not in the last couple weeks. I mean, last week she did go over to try and seduce Ben and stuff.
And then he got kidnapped.
Yeah. Oops.
Whoops.
Oh, man.
Bad timing.
All right, so let's talk a little bit more about Cornell. This is the cop, after all.
Yeah.
So, as we saw in the very beginning, Ben visits Cornell's daughter in prison from a tip from Arthur, or Fenton, who said, didn't tell him that that's Cornell's daughter, just says, oh, this other person's life was turned upside down because of Cornell and, wrongly accused, all that stuff. And she's in there for drugs, and she then points Ben in the direction of another family whose life was changed for the worse because of Cornell, because what seems to be false accusations. But later we learn we're not.
Well, we learn that she is guilty, first of all, her daughter. And I guess, but Cornell later said that her daughter had options and that was, she chose that. So they didn't really say what the other options were. Yeah. So Fenton definitely set it up in a way where Ben believed that she was railroaded by her own mother, when we learn. But she was guilty, and so she was serving her time, and that's just the way it goes.
Yeah, I feel like Cornell drives a hard bargain, and it was probably like, okay, here's the deal. You can, own up to your responsibilities in this situation and do however long, 2 years, whatever it is, in prison, or you can, whatever the other option is, become a cop.
Yeah, or go to rehab
shadow
or
me
something.
For a month at work. I don't know.
That sounds terrible.
Come be my best friend. Who knows what
whatever
the
it
other
was. But I mean, she committed a crime and she was doing her time for it. But we didn't realize that until later.
Yes.
When we learned that all of these people that she's locking up are actually guilty, or that she's harassing or whatever.
Yeah. And this episode too, until the end, until we kind of learn about Cornell's daughter having been rightly accused and sentenced, that, we kind of see Cornell starting to unravel a little bit. She's usually very stern and very tough all the time and angry even. But this week, I think we saw her getting a little uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Too.
Well, I think she's very protective of her family, and I don't necessarily think that she would want it being broadcasted that her daughter is in jail and all of this stuff. But it seems like also when the two cops or whatever pulled Ben over, you think immediately that she's behind that by some means, just to scare Ben. But the lawyer later says that she had nothing to do with it.
Right.
So it does show that she is like a good cop, but she's still really tough.
Yeah, really tough and not going to let up on anybody. But
what was that line that Ben said? I'm going to go home and you can go to hell, or whatever that was.
Yeah.
That was so funny.
She's like, you have two choices. You can confess now and, avoid a trial, or you can get ready for a full court press.
Yeah.
There's a third option. Zing.
I can go home and you can go to hell. Yeah, that part
We're like,
was.
Ooh, Ben,
yeah,
you got her.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. When she laid out all of the evidence she had against Ben, and that was just another scare tactic. She's like really into, even when she says he's arrested, but he's really not. He's not in handcuffs or anything.
Ben's so dumb, I think.
he
in so many ways,
thought he was arrested.
Yeah. You don't, okay, here's the thing. I have police officers in my family and stuff, so I know I may be more than the average person about that, but watching this, not really, because I feel like most people would be like, wait, am I arrested? What for?
Well, first of all, he's standing out there by himself, with no cops around him. You know what I mean? When he's in the parking lot. And second of all, they would have arrested him after they found the flashlight in the woods. They wouldn't take him there to find it with them.
Exactly. Yeah. So while we're watching, we're like, what is going on? This is so weird. And then, of course, it makes sense. The lawyer shows up and he's like, oh, you weren't really arrested. Why would you not be in handcuffs? Obviously. And
duh.
And so, yeah, but that whole thing, it's smart of Cornell to trick him like that and to kind of make him think he's arrested. And thankfully, he didn't end up saying anything like a dummy.
Yeah,
but
and
later,
he would've,
at the end, of course, she's like, "Oh, do you want your lawyer?" You say yes.
Yes.
Now
when
that you
she's
have
at your house.
Yeah. Now that you have this fancy lawyer, you don't just go like, oh, Cornell, come on in. I'm just having a scotch over here on Christmas Eve by myself. Let's chat.
Yeah. First of all, and she never like presents what she's there for right off the bat. The conversation lasted a few minutes, like at the beginning, and I was like, wait, what is she actually there for? Because they're just chit-chatting away.
Right? He's so, I mean, sometimes he's like, oh, Cornell's not that bad. And then other times he's like, she's the worst. Stay away from my family. But at this, I mean, the end, I'm just like, Ben, you actually now have a very good lawyer. Yeah. Somebody paid for it. Do you think that's Dave? What if Dave is like secretly rich? It sounded like it might be the brother-in-law. Yeah, that's what it sounded like. I don't think Dave's secretly rich. He had to move in with his mom for a little while when he couldn't find a place to live.
Maybe he's just like sitting on buckets of money and he's just not spending it.
He's like, how do you think I got so rich? Because I never spend my own money.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, no, I think it's the brother-in-law.
Yeah.
Because when
he's like protecting him, but also like secretly doing it.
Right. So when Ben goes to drop off the Christmas presents, you know, he confronts him about that, about turning him in, or tipping off the police, and then does say something like, oh yeah, or he says, you probably should get a good lawyer. He's like, oh, I have one. Do you know anything about that?
And he just walks away. Well, I think what Michael assumes is that if he is to get a good lawyer, which he wants him to have a good lawyer, I guess, but that Christy would probably end up paying for it since she's the breadwinner right now.
Yeah.
And so he's probably trying to like just
and I mean, if
that.
You know, if that's your sister's husband and father of your nieces, you know, if he's guilty and he goes to trial, the hope is obviously that he would be found out. But then if he's not and it's still so stacked against him, you want to make sure, you know, he's got the best chances, I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So who knows? But that still is an interesting situation.
And it's also not confirmed that it's him.
Right.
It just seems like it is.
It was just a cashier's check sent in for $25,000. Yikes. Lawyers. Wow. So that's suspicious. And I wonder if we're going to see more about Christy's brother in the future.
I feel like we probably will, since now Christy and the girls are kind of moving in with him for a little bit at least.
Right. Yeah. What did you think about all that at the end?
Well, I feel like the fighting and everything, it was kind of a long time coming. Mm-hmm. Like, I feel like Christy's been wanting to leave, and it just was an awkward time because of the whole, you know, murder situation. Of like, you can't just really pack up your bags and leave during a time like that, because that just you just look like a terrible person, first of all. But yeah, I feel like it was just bound to happen. Yeah. I feel bad for the girls, obviously, but they're constantly hearing them fight. Mm-hmm. I feel like they just don't love each other anymore.
No. Though we did see her tell him, you know, I love you and I hate you, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I feel like it was either going to go, I think they were either going to kind of make up and start going back on track, or things are going to explode even more. And I have some hope that they're going to like resolve things by the end.
Yeah, I feel like they just need to like have some time, some space, let it settle, you know, simmer down.
Yeah.
And then maybe they'll work it out once this is all resolved. Yeah. But can we talk about that crazy bomb she just dropped?
I was just going to say that.
The Sam guy, the client, like we kind of assumed like something sketchy was going on with her client, but like she just was like, I didn't do that until after I found out about you cheating on me. And I was like, wait, hold on, what?
That hadn't been confirmed. It had been assumed because of the lingerie and the jewelry and all the late night meetings and stuff. And so it seemed like Ben definitely came to that conclusion. So it wasn't like brand new news for him. But it was news for us. Like, it wasn't confirmed yet.
Well, and he didn't even react to it.
No.
It was just basically they continued on with the conversation, and when we were watching, we were like, "Wait, what? Wait, that's confirmed?
Like,
she cheated?
She did for real. Do that. So
that was
there
crazy.
We had it.
There you go.
Had the affair with Sam after she found out about Jess, which still doesn't make it right, Christy. Two wrongs don't make it right.
That definitely does not help at all,
or make things less complicated.
And like for her to be so like nonchalant about it, and then also give Ben such a hard time. Mm-hmm. Like even when Jess came to apologize, she was still, I feel like, giving Ben a hard time about it. But she's guilty of the same thing. Doesn't matter who did it first,
right?
You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah. So not okay.
That's just not healthy.
I wonder, is Sam gonna end up becoming more part of the storyline? I don't feel like it really, but I could see that potentially happening.
What if Sam is the cashier check guy? Because he's like, I don't want Christy to. What if he's like in love with Christy?
But why would he pay for Ben's lawyer? Wouldn't he
Like
want
to help
him to have
Christy?
a bad lawyer to go to jail?
I guess so. I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
I just don't know how he would like come back. It doesn't seem like she loves him.
No.
But we also have never seen him before.
Right.
So it's hard to say.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a huge thing to just quickly drop like that. And I thought we would see more of a solid reaction from Ben.
Yeah.
On that. I mean, it's in the moment of like a very heated argument about their whole relationship, essentially.
But he wasn't even like, oh, so you did.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like, well,
it was
that.
never really
Yeah.
confirmed.
He was like, all right, well, whatever.
Anyway.
So anyway, that big bomb happened. And while this is all happened, so then Ben essentially kicks Christy out.
Yeah,
and
he opens the door for her to leave.
Yeah,
I was
get
like,
out. That's the last ultimatum you give me,
yeah.
girl. And
But can he kick her out though? Like, doesn't she pay the bills?
yeah, I mean, I don't know how that works when you like kick someone out of the house that you share with somebody.
I guess she said though, I'm leaving.
Yeah.
If you don't tell me what's going on. And so he
Right.
assumed that
She's
she
like-
would leave. And also, I guess that he doesn't really have anywhere to go, and she does.
No. Yeah. So it makes sense. I think they'll resolve it.
And then, but she
ultimately.
goes ahead and takes the girls.
Yeah,
and
which
stuff.
was really sad because I think obviously this whole time we kind of see that Abby is not Ben's favorite, but Ben of Mom and Dad, Ben is kind of Abby's favorite.
Yeah, well, it seems like both of the girls, and we see this,
Right.
you know, they have a special relationship with Ben. I mean, obviously, Abby's like she loves him to death, but it seems like, you know, they both like appreciate having him there
Yeah.
because it does seem like Christy is a little like less involved, like wants to be a cool mom, like blah, 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 which it sounds like that's what they were getting at.
Yeah, and I really liked finally Nat coming in and having that moment with him, which it came off of the whole like neighbor guy or the other guy that Cornell had prosecuted who had committed suicide because he raped a young girl.
yeah.
So it had just come off of that scene. And so I think both of us, as we were watching it, I was like, where's this going? Like, this is a weird, I'm uncomfortable. What's happening?
She like brought it up in a really weird
Yeah.
way. I was like, so what is she
like, what's she
getting
about
at?
to tell
and
him?
Ben didn't even, he was like, okay, so what's wrong? Because
Yeah.
she was like, I just like that you're tough on me and I know I need that.
Yeah,
And
I
then
was
he's
like-
like, okay, so where are we getting with this?
Right, you know, and she's like, well, what's gonna, you know, what happens if you
Yeah.
go away? And I loved finally seeing that from her because she's been such a pain in the ass.
Yeah, that's true.
Like,
yeah, but
if she's
she's a
16 or
teenager
whatever,
and like
15.
her dad is going
I
through
get
some
it.
like crazy stuff. Yeah, I
Yeah.
definitely get it. But, you know,
think
it was nice to see her being supportive.
right,
and
it was
that-
such a mature moment for
Yeah.
her. So it was good to see that. And, you know, and she asked that. And then at the end, Ben temporarily is not going to be as present because he and Christy are going to have some space. So yeah, that was a tough scene there at the end with the girls getting kind of ripped out of there.
Yeah.
And
Because especially, I feel like they didn't have any warning about leaving or whatever. And so that they got to think about that, though, when they're just going to make a decision that big.
yeah, and I think
Christy wasn't comforting to them at all
No.
either. She just like went ahead and got in the car and like left Ben to deal with the girls.
right.
I felt
and I
like.
feel like they are pretty level-headed people in general and good parents that, you know, you don't like, that was so dramatic. Like,
Yeah.
don't do it like that.
Don't do
I mean,
it
I get
that.
it. I get
Well,
why it's making
Ab-
drama and, you
Yeah.
know, they want that tension, but
And Abby even said, she was like, to Christy, her mom, she was like, you only care about yourself, like, blah, blah. And I was like, that's kind of right. Like, Christy, like, wasn't, you know, very maternal in that moment, you know.
No.
She was, like, yelling at the girls to get down there. She was like, we're leaving, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah. Like, no explanation. When kids are involved, I feel like that needs to be handled differently.
yeah.
You
I
can't just
agree.
storm out on your own, you know?
Right. And no matter what is going on with your spouse, you know, say, okay, let's put a lid on it right now. I'm pissed at you, but let's cool it. And we're going to calmly tell the girls what's going on and get out of here, you know? And then we'll deal with this later when they're not home.
I know.
In the next room.
Yeah.
But, we're not parents.
We're not parents, so
we don't know.
I don't know. I honestly don't know how I would react in that situation. Maybe the same way Chrissy did. So.
Yeah. So I feel like we've gone through pretty much everybody. As we talked about before, it kind of closes with Cornell coming to the house and showing Ben this video from the cab. So, she's like, okay, just want to run through your story again, and shows him a video from the cab where, and she's like, well, did you for sure didn't see Jess that night, and you for sure didn't see Tom. And he's like I told you,
Yeah.
And
but the thing is, I feel like Ben shouldn't be so adamant about what he did or didn't do that night, because he was blackout.
Right.
He should be, I feel like he should be honest about that. Like, I drank way too much. Like, I don't remember exactly.
He even kind of says that to Cornell in the beginning. She says, well, are you going to say that you didn't kill Tom again? And he's like, well, I know I didn't. She's like, how
do you know? Yeah.
Well, I know my character, which doesn't mean because I know I didn't, because I was there fully conscious and I didn't.
Yeah.
So I feel like he should.
I don't think he should have. Yeah, he should have had his lawyer first of all. But he also said, "I'm not violent," and we know he's been violent.
We've seen him punch several people.
Yeah, we've seen him get a little crazy.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's not the most convincing argument.
No, I feel like he opened himself up there to be like, actually, I don't completely remember, but I know who I am, so I know I would never do something like that.
Yeah. So I couldn't really see the video. Is he like definitely walking to Jess's house?
That's the way she makes it appear, but
he's just walking in the street.
Yeah, that's the thing. I feel like that's such a teaser type thing. Like, it doesn't show him actually going into the house or actually
approaching the property
or talking to Jess. So it could be like he stumbles around for a little while and then like looks up and is like, oh, there's my house, and then walks to his house. It could be some trick like that.
But he did also leave that voicemail for Jess, so maybe it was on his brain, and when you've been drinking, it just kind of happens.
There, knocked on the door, some drunk confession.
And we don't know if she answered or whatever. Jess hasn't said anything about that night. Like, she hasn't said that she saw Ben or anything that we know of.
Right. Exactly. I'm excited for next week. I think we're going to learn
I'm
quite a
really
bit. I'm
excited.
very excited for the next few episodes.
Yeah.
We've got 3 left. And
I have a feeling the finale is going to be crazy.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up, though, I just want the storyline with the dad who raped the girl, and then, like, that was a crazy story.
Yeah.
Because, first of all, Fenton thought that Cornell had just assumed he was guilty and then kind of harassed him for years to come, even though he was never arrested for it. And the family believes that he was innocent, especially his wife believed that he was innocent. But then it wasn't until the son found the pictures in the basement and confronted his dad about it. And then the dad killed himself. He hung himself in the basement. Like,
that was a heavy
storyline. Yeah. And so then it's kind of like, well, like, we would want Cornell to be after a guy like this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it turns out, like, the wife, like, can't, just because she says he's innocent doesn't mean, because if you love somebody, you don't want to assume that they would do something so terrible like that. But now, since the story's been brought up, they'll do more investigation and she'll probably learn. But it's probably best, though, if that's what happened.
That's the
but
truth.
now he's already, dead. So
I know that was
a really crazy storyline.
Yeah,
and then you could see Ben was like, "Oh man, I just like really screwed this up."
Yeah, and I think with relation to Cornell, I mean, we saw with her daughter's situation, with Fenton, even with then this family, and then the cops harassing Ben, all these things that kind of pointed to her being corrupt ended up not being true, or there was more to the story that showed that she wasn't actually corrupt, so I still feel like she's super tough, but completely agree, she seems to go after
guilty
people who do it.
Yeah.
She's got a good sense about it. But
and to be fair, Ben is pretty suspicious. I've got to say.
For sure.
Especially with the whole flashlight situation. And
And
then not being so open about not remembering what happened that night. And now they have the surveillance video.
Yeah, we don't even know for sure that he didn't do it or he wasn't involved. I mean, we trust him and we like him because...
Isn't that crazy how that happens?
Yeah.
Like, we're like, he didn't do it. Like,
no,
what?
yeah, but it could flip it all on us too.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah. All right. So I think we did wrapped up this episode.
That's
How about some predictions for next week?
Okay, let's see.
Prediction jinglers.
Now,
Yeah.
AFTERBUZZ
Lights.
TV.
So we talked about Dave a lot.
Yeah.
I feel like next week or one of these next episodes, we have got to, first of all, find out, get it confirmed that he moved the flashlight. I don't know if he would necessarily tell Ben that he did it. Like, I feel like he shouldn't tell Ben, so Ben doesn't have like this knowledge.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I think
because
Ben
it's just going to do something to mess
I feel like
it up.
it's better off Ben not knowing where the flashlight is
Right.
anymore. You know?
I think so too. I do think we will
Get
I feel
confirmation.
Like,
they can't just leave it
confirmation
open.
on where that went. And I feel like Dave moved it.
Yeah. I
Dave
agree with
was
that.
involved
I see that.
in what happened that night to a bigger extent.
Yeah. I want to know more about Jess. Like,
Yeah.
she seems so suspicious to me. I don't know. Because, like, if Ben did go over there, he would have seen Jess.
Right.
You
Yeah,
know?
I think that we'll also get more Jess next week because we haven't had a lot from her.
Yeah, and then her
lately.
sister and Scott, like, just kind of straight up disappeared. Like,
Yeah.
we need to know more about that, too.
I feel like they were clear. I mean, maybe not Scott because he was in the military, but the sister, I feel like, well, he wasn't when Tom died. They were both together, apparently. But I feel like they should be more suspect. I mean, I'm suspicious of them.
Yeah.
I wonder if they'll come back.
I just think this is so crazy that, like, when I think about, you know, I can say point fingers at who I think did it or whatever, but it's crazy that this little boy was just, like, was killed and found in the woods, and I just can't picture Ben doing that.
No, not at all.
Even if he's drunk.
I feel like some weird stuff definitely happened when he was blacked out, but I don't think he was involved in Tom's death.
Yeah.
My suspicions right now are largely with Dave. I know on our YouTube comments, lots of folks think that Christy is like the shoe-in for the one who
Christy.
did it, and then lots of people are suspicious of Jess too. And I don't think Christy did it. I don't.
Yeah, I was suspicious of Christy definitely the first few episodes
Yeah.
because she just rubbed me
Yeah,
the
and
wrong
it's-
way.
and it's a
but I
clear,
just like
like-
don't think she did it either.
Right, and it's a clear type of like revenge thing, you know, for her being upset about the affair and then the illegitimate child.
Yeah.
So how do you kind of solve that problem? Kill the kid. I
don't know, that's
But I don't
extreme.
think she did it.
Yeah,
I
don't think she did it
decided
either.
to have her little affair fling, and that was kind of her way of dealing with the whole situation.
It is kind of crazy though that like you were saying earlier, Ben like just like kind of willy-nilly put the flashlight in the woods, and then Tom was found in the woods, but that was also Dave's idea to hide stuff in the woods. Yeah. I don't know if they're related,
I don't know.
but it's also like woods in very populated areas.
yeah, like I said, soak that thing in a bucket of acid and then ship it to another state.
Yeah.
That's how I get rid of
that makes sense.
evidence.
That's
when
what I would do.
when I commit a murder.
That's what I would do.
Alrighty, so I think we'll see more Jess next week. I think we're going to learn a bit more about Dave's situation.
I feel like Jess has got to be like grieving more.
Well, she's always crying when we see her,
Yeah,
usually.
but I feel like she's got to be less concerned about being in love with Ben right now.
Right?
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I thought she for sure was going to come over at some
Yeah.
point this episode. I'm like, all right,
When she
Christy
said-
left. Here comes Jess.
with a bottle of wine.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm glad she
Teary.
I'm glad she didn't do that.
Yeah,
That would
let's
have been
talk
too
about
much.
our son. Yeah, it would have been too much. So,
It
yeah,
was just
I think we'll see
Cornell
more for
instead.
next week. Yeah, Cornell. I was like, what is she
What
gonna
if Cornell
do?
showed up with a bottle of wine?
Oh, that would be
That
so
would be
weird.
fun. That would be really funny.
All right, everyone. Thanks so much again for tuning in. Glad to be back talking and watching Secrets and Lies. Be sure to tune in with us again next week, youtube.com/AfterBuzzTV. You can also find all the podcasts on iTunes and SoundCloud as well. While we're at it, be sure you guys tweet to us. We want to know what you guys think of the episodes. Who do you think did it? What do you think is going to happen next week?
Yeah, help us out with these
Let us
predictions.
know.
We're struggling
Are we
a little
off
bit.
base? Are we on track? What do you think? I'm Lauren Salon, and you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, everywhere at Lauren Salon.
She's everywhere.
Everywhere on the internet.
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Sterling Cates.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.